Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode 123. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us here for this Sunday show, wrapping up the 2022 NFL Draft. Pittsburgh making their picks rounds 4 through 7, and also assigning undrafted players. Dave, so much for us to discuss after a great draft weekend. Congrats and kudos to our Steelers Depot team who did an unbelievable job. We want to thank everyone who followed the site and interacted. I thought just overall it was a really successful weekend.
Absolutely. And we do appreciate everybody that visited the site. And if you listen to the podcast or the terrible takes, certainly appreciate that as well. And yeah, man, you guys, Alex, Matthew, Josh, go down the list there. Just really tore it up where it came to content. I think we had profiles on all the draft picks, did we not? And I think that's the first time, is it not?
I believe so. I know we did more draft profiles overall last year, but did not have profiles on every single Steelers pick. This year we had profiles on all 7 selections. So I believe that is the first, which is just a testament to the work our team put in.
Absolutely, because I mean, there's only so many that you could do, and obviously you try to whittle this thing down the best you can, and pick out some of the surprises maybe that could land in there. I mean, I don't think we did a lot of offensive linemen, right? Obviously we didn't do as many profiles on certain positions because either they didn't fit or we didn't think the position need was all that high. But one of the goals, I think that's something that you and I tell the team every year going into this thing is, man, sure would like to come out of this thing with being able to, after every draft pick is announced, throw up one of those profiles, and that certainly is a great feeling. And once again, tip because I know you handle a lot of that back end stuff with those guys and communicating that stuff. So kudos to you and the draft team, which is outstanding work. I learned so much about a lot of players, like I said the other day, because of people being able to have those draft profiles on the site.
Absolutely, same here. But I'll admit Pittsburgh made this year pretty easy on us in terms of not having a lot of draft surprises. Really only one name from this entire class was unanticipated, and that was the 4th round pick we can start with today, Calvin Austin III. Not that it was a reach. I thought it was a good value, but there was just really no dot connecting to Austin. Obviously, his body type being a small receiver at under 5'8", $170 makes him an atypical selection when it comes to the position. But I'm really excited about this kid. I think he had that infusion of speed we've been talking about and yearning for years now, it feels like. He'll have to learn how to play in the slot more than he did in college at Memphis, but a really dynamic guy who can win deep, can take short catches and run long, and just win in a lot of different ways. So I know he's a small guy. I'm not comparing him to G. Archer. I think those comparisons are lazy and unfounded. I think he's just got a really good receiver in Calvin Austin.
Kevin Colbert feels liberated, does he not? he ended his look. There had seemed to be a kind of a measurable bias against wide receivers, that Kevin Colbert has taken over the years, and we've talked about that few times. And quite honestly, you could probably honestly say this is really the first wide receiver that Kevin Colbert has drafted under 5'10", and people saying, whoa, Dave, not so fast. Antoine Randall L was a wide receiver, and
DeMarcus Ayers.
Yeah, DeMarcus Ayers was a wide receiver. Well, technically Antoine Randall L was a quarterback coming out of Indiana, and the Steelers kind of viewed, probably thought maybe they could do some things with him, maybe similar to obviously the Hines Ward and that kind of thing there. So there is a somewhat technicality in there, and DeMarcus Ayers Look, I'll never forget that Danny Smith was a guy that they rolled out to introduce that pick because they really, I thought of him more as a special teamer first and a wide receiver second there. And you brought up an interesting name, obviously, in Dre Archer. That kid was a running back. All right. He might be listed on Pro Football Reference as a wide receiver and all like that. But I don't know how much you remember of that Kent State tape, Alex, way back in whatever year it was. But, a lot of the passes that he caught were a lot, shorter distant passes, average. Too bad we don't have a good solid average depth of target number to go back to right away on him coming out of Kent State and all, but really a different player overall. And that's why you're right to say at the top of this thing, for people drawing comparisons to Dre Archer, to Calvin Austin III. Yeah, that's just absolute. There is no comparison other than the two have blazing speed. I think and that's where the kind of the comparison ends there. But you mentioned it being a surprise, but not a surprise, and it was a surprise from the fact, like you stated. I think Rick Raprice was the only one at Memphis, if I'm not mistaken, at the pro day, according to your pro day tracker. Second, the team had already, even though I wanted the team to draft two wide receivers, at no time did I really give much serious thought to this team drafting two wide receivers. And if they did draft one, I didn't think it'd be one under 5'10" for all the reasons that we just mentioned there. So, obviously, I didn't watch as much tape on Calvin Austin III, and I'm embarrassed to say I watched so much on Devin Tompkins, who ended up going undrafted, but that didn't really surprise me overall. Kid didn't get invited to the combine, but I viewed Tompkins more as a novelty and couldn't take my eyes off of his tape. And B, I kept pushing, a good section of the Calvin Austin tape down my to-do list because I just didn't think the Steelers would go that route with a shorter wide receiver. But in the initial tape that I have watched, he is a dynamic player and one that can do a lot for this team out of the slot, vertically, who knows what, maybe in the return portion of the game. And I'm just tickled pink that you got two wide receivers. One can play a Z. One can play. Well, both of them really can play all over the place, quite honestly. But they'll obviously have their probably their best suited positions, and both have that what speed that I kind of craved way before the draft.
Sure, but different body types, different styles, different ways they win, and that's important to have in a room. A diverse skill set. You have your power forward looking types, and Claypool, and hopefully Boykin can make an impact. You have Damontae, who's that very typical X receiver. Austin really played the X primarily at Memphis, but he's going to move to the slot and kind of be that quick twitch slot guy. And Pickens is some sort of mix of it all, I suppose. A fluid guy, a longer guy, can play X, can play Z, maybe work inside a little bit as well. So there's just a lot of talent there with Pickens, and I think that offers a lot of versatility. Is it a coincidence that the first year without Ben, they draft a small receiver? Because Ben did not like receivers small, generally speaking. So I wonder if that's maybe if that's one kind of barrier that has been taken down, obviously, now that he's retired. I just wonder about that. But yeah, Austin himself, really talented guy. And again, this guy was a defined, productive receiver. I mean, this guy's been a 1,000-yard receiver the past 2 years at Memphis. He's explosive. He wins one-on-one matchups. I watched him at the Senior Bowl. And granted, in some of those one-on-one Senior Bowl, it's always favored very heavily towards the offense. And a quick twitch guy like Austin should win, should make guys look silly. But he did. And so I think, he can make an impact, obviously, vertically, because he's got legit 4.3 speed. He's got a legit track background, went to Memphis to run track and play football. But he can also be the yak threat, that can take the 5-yard slant on the RPO and run 50 yards. So I think it'll fit well with Matt Canada's offense of some of the quick game, the bubble screen game, the RPO game, those type of things. That's just and the value. I thought he could have been a day 2 guy. And so to get him in the 4th round, I think is really strong value.
Yeah, I think that kind of probably surprised him a little bit, especially with the way the wide receivers were coming off the board in this draft and all like that. Calvin Austin had 22 catches of 20 or more air yards past the line of scrimmage at Memphis. So when you talk about, this is just another Dree Archer pick. No, he had a kind of a real healthy depth of target aspect to him there. That's exciting to see. But you look at the RAS score on this kid, 9.04 to get a player like that with kind of the position versatility that he has. Where the Steelers got him in a draft class that, albeit loaded with wide receivers, there were teams that still, where it's glad where he didn't go, the Ravens, who needed a wide kind of that. They traded away, obviously, right. Hollywood Brown and all like that. Calvin Austin had 8 rushes for 169 yards and 3 TDs at Memphis. Not that you're going to utilize him a lot, but you can in some of those jet sweeps. He had 30 receptions that resulted in gains of 25 or more yards on 156 catches. So 30 of this kid's catches were a quarter of the football field or more. So, what is one thing that just harped at just constantly these last couple of years with this Steelers offense is explosive plays down the football field. You got another guy now that hopefully can deliver that to you. Things that stick out positively on tape, just that jitterbug kind of player off the lines. Got in some fashions, he's got a unique release. It's unorthodox. Sometimes he'll try to duck, on his release to get off the line. You want to kind of get away from that because that ends up wasted movement, wasted steps, and all like that. I mean, he's able to get free in some of those instances, but sometimes when he uses kind of traditional. His athleticism and his footwork off the line, it's reminiscent of some of that tape of Deontay Johnson coming by out of Toledo, 2 steps off the line has a 1.5 yard separation between him and a defensive back, whether it be to the right or to the left or vertically there. So that's one thing that I'm going to really kind of concentrate on as I get deeper into his college tape is that aspect there. There are obviously some catches over the middle. And I think Frisman Jackson highlighted that, despite this kid's a track kid playing football, so to speak, that he has seen toughness on him over the middle, and I think we got Andrew Shaver to find the exact.
Is that where you got it from? I could not find that clip. I spent like 10 minutes trying to find that Temple game. I could not find it.
I'm sorry. Sources.
Okay. Pull the Pat McAfee. Sources.
Yeah. You think, look, Steelers Depot don't play around. Right. We find, and you're right. Cause I could hear you in YouTube digging for that very clip. And how do I know that? Because I was in there digging for that thing.
I found the 2020 game. And I was like, maybe he's talking about the 2020 game, but he wasn't.
Yeah. Right. And I went, look, there's the, I don't know if you know this, there's the Memphis O-line versus Temple defense tape from I think that year as well too. And it's not in there. Anyway, one of our new guys, Andrew Shaver, has sources and was able to pull that for me. And I think that's the exact clip. That's the only thing that we can find close to that. But look, to get this kid where they got him at and all, and to be a second wide receiver, and this team needing a slot of that build, because now you can kind of mix and match, right? You can play some Chase Claypool or whoever as a big slot. We'll see what happens with Anthony Miller if he makes the squad. Don't know if he will. He obviously is more kind of a average kind of slot kind of player. And then you got a little bit undersized guy in Calvin Austin, and obviously your hope is that you can get Calvin Austin to be a a heavy portion of your 11 personnel and be that slot guy going forward there. So we'll dig deeper into the tape. I think there's a few drops in there or whatnot, but impressive guy.
The last thing I would say about the Archer comparisons, there's the debate. Was he a running back? Was he a receiver? That's the problem. Nobody knew what he was. Pittsburgh didn't know what he was, what to do with him. He was kind of running back, and they wouldn't even – I remember, when they would do backs on backers drills, they would take him out, and he would go do receiver drills because they didn't trust him to pass protect because he was so small. But he wasn't really a receiver. As you said, he was really more of a running back in college. And so there was no fit. Austin is a clearly defined receiver. He's been a receiver. That's going to be his role. There's no ambiguity about what his position is going to be in Pittsburgh. So does that guarantee success? No, but it certainly, I think, lays a better foundation than where this team had with Archer, where they just said, we'll draft the fast guy and try to figure out where he fits later. Austin, there's a fit and there's a role right away. And this guy, he's coming from a quote unquote smaller school, non-Power 5, but he had some really good matchups against top players. Sauce Gardner, you posted clips of him against Sauce, and Sauce, a top 5 pick in this class.
Fits.
Yeah. I mean, Gardner, I think probably won some battles, but Austin, I think, had with a number 7 for 121 in 2020. I don't know if all that came off of Sauce, probably not, but some of it did. Against Marcus Jones, the Houston corner who went 3rd round this year. They had some really good battles. Jones won some, but Austin won some as well. And so you saw him win and compete against really quality competition, guys in his draft class as peers. And so that makes you feel more comfortable about the evaluation. The guy also had a really strong Senior Bowl week as well. So I'm not concerned about him playing against, quote unquote, lesser competition, which again is still FBS level.
Right. You see, and how many times we talked about, boy, it'd be nice to have one of them Memphis guys,
Yeah. Randy Feetner's spirit lives on.
Right. Absolutely. And, obviously they got a Memphis guy in Anthony Miller there and all like that. And a lot of these Memphis guys, coming out, as of late have kind of been more, running back / wide receiver, right?
Pollard and Gibson. Yeah.
Right. But Austin is a lot more defined as a wide receiver there. Right. And Sauce had Sauce Gardner kind of pulling on that jersey of his quite a bit to keep him under control. You know what I'm saying? Because there was obviously some clips on that all 22 of Austin being able to get some separation there, and Sauce Gardner wisely did not, didn't want him to get away, so he grabbed him a time or two in there. So once again, we'll dig deeper on the tape on him. It is exciting to see the Steelers get kind of a different kind of receiver in the draft than kind of what we're used to seeing them get, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. So I'm happy with it overall. Again, I thought he could have been a day 2 guy. And Kevin Colbert's talked about this, and we mentioned this. I think I even talked about Austin specifically several episodes ago about the horizontal passing game and how that's, I think, allowed teams to draft some of those smaller guys because the game is a little less vertical and you can run so many crossing routes and things like that. In the quick game, the screen game, it's allowed those small guys to really have a role. And I don't think you have to manufacture touches for Austin the way that you might some other players, but just not, being able to run a different kind of route tree and running, catch short, run long, as you say. I think that's going to be important and valuable and makes you more comfortable about taking a smaller guy because he's not having to always release vertically and try to get off a press and things like that.
Another thing with a guy like kind of a jitterbug kind of wide receiver such as this too, versus a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster, and this is in no way not going to be a slight against Juju Smith-Schuster because we saw what he could do on 3rd downs and the kind of tough yardage that he got after the catch. But if you were to run 11 personnel the way the Steelers have been running a lot of 11 personnel these last several years, what kind of defensive player are you going to have? What kind of defensive grouping are you going to see on the other side of the field from a package that includes Juju in the slot?
Nickel.
But you could get away with a more heavier grouping, right?
I'm not sure what you mean.
I mean, you could try to put a safety or kind of a bigger bodied defensive back on him.
Yeah, I mean, you can
for
tackle
the
it different
most
ways.
Part.
But if you have nickel corner out there, your slot corner is probably covering Juju in the slot.
Well, now you have one of those kind of not so fleet of foot, bigger. You're not going to be able to put a safety or a linebacker on a guy like Austin in the slot.
Right. Yeah, I mean, there's different ways. Juju's advantage in the slot was being that bigger guy against the typical smaller slot corner and kind of being able to box him out. Austin's, way he's going to win is with the twitchiness, and maybe he's going against a guy who looks like him, a smaller guy, but just being able to create more space. I think Austin's going to be capable of that. And while certainly you do think about, how do you replace Juju's sure-handedness on third down? That'll be Pat Freiermuth this year. I mean, Freiermuth will kind of become that safety valve, that option route guy, that over the ball type route dude on third down. It's going to make the tough catch. And so while, Austin's skill set's not the same as Juju's, clearly Pat Freiermuth to me basically becomes the new Juju.
And another aspect of this as well, too, that you look at is, and I think Frizz and talking about these wide receivers kind of combined now is, maybe this will potentially at some point as they get these guys integrated into the into the offense and all, produce more predominantly too high safety looks from opposing defenses and get extra players out of the box, which will then hopefully in turn kind of help the running game, right?
Yeah, no, I think so. When you can threaten teams vertically, you kind of change how they cover things, how they play more off coverage, how they might have to play a little more too high, and that can hopefully lighten the box and open up the run game.
And Lord knows this team needs to be able to push the football down the field vertically more. I mean,
yeah.
Look, there is on tape. You see Austin with the catch short, run long. He's going to get some of those. Obviously, you would hope as a byproduct of some of that speed and being able to, run those short kind of mesh, short digs and all like that there. But make no mistake about it. And until we see otherwise, this team needs to be able to produce more explosive plays with footballs thrown down the field more than 15 yards in the air. And hopefully now with the addition of Pickens and Austin and obviously down the road, Pickett, whether it be sooner rather than later, that can start happening because they're not going to be that 30-point a game offense until they're able to do that.
Right. If you can be the quick hitter, what did Mike Tomlin say a couple times last year? Something to the effect of chunk plays, erase a lot of technique or whatever the phrase was, basically saying get the chunk play. You don't need to manufacture the 10-play methodical drive of winning on every single down. You just get the 70-yard, long ball, and that can really change a game in short order. Last thing on Austin, not as much return value as you would think for a guy of his profile, but he did do some punt returns, and to me had one of my favorite plays of last year against Mississippi State, where there was a punt return. They try to down it at the one. They bat it back in the field of play, but they never actually downed the ball. The Mississippi State coverage unit never actually grabbed the football, and so it was still live. But you can, as a return guy, you can pick it up with no risk because if you fumble it, the ball's going to be dead where it was touched. So Austin races in, picks up the football, and returns it like 90 yards for a touchdown. And so a really heads-up play there. And assuming I can find the audio, I believe I still have it. I talked to Austin at the Senior Bowl, really brief conversation, just a couple minutes, but I asked him about that play, and he kind of walked me through that whole play. And so hopefully I can pull the audio and write up the transcript of our conversation at the Senior Bowl. But yeah, some punt return value there, and maybe kick return value. Obviously, Gunnar Olszewski's going to have a role and could be the guy, but Austin's going to, be able to give Pittsburgh probably some value or some option there.
Yeah, you go from last year not drafting any wide receivers to losing 3 during unrestricted free agency to adding 1 kind of late right pre-draft in Miles Boykin that's got some pedigree to him, more of a X or Z type, to adding 2 more to that room. So now we go from, man, I wonder what this wide receiver group is going to look like, to having a more clear defined picture of what it might look like and adding some level of excitement to it because you got 2 young, explosive guys in it. So I was one of the happiest Steelers fans on the face of the planet, I think, because I was really hoping deep down inside that this team would draft 2 wide receivers. I was convinced that they would not do so. And I am tickled pink, and hopefully both these kids work out.
Yeah, absolutely. I know the new guys are all projection. They've never taken a snap in Pittsburgh. What do you think is the stronger group of three? Juju, Washington, and McLeod versus Pickens, Austin, and Boykin. Which would you take?
Say that again. You gave me a different kind of three now. I thought you were going to give me. Give me the sets.
Well, the three they lost, which is Juju, Washington, and McLeod, and the three they added, which is, I know I added Gunner, but I'm not including him as a receiver, but Boykin, Pickens, and Austin, who was the better.
Oh yeah, I mean, the second group by far, and really the only thing that to me boistered the first group was Juju and what he would give you on third downs and after the catch. Now, how much of all that was I'm not using that as a blame to James Washington or Ray McLeod. Look, we knew who Ray McLeod was. I mean, it just a slightly upgraded version of Ryan Switzer, I think. He obviously helped you more in the return game and did, some stability in that aspect of it. But Ray McLeod was never more than an average depth of target player of 4 yards. I mean, that's who he was. James Washington was more of a Marcus Wheaton overall, a guy that could, you just couldn't count on him enough, I don't think, to win vertically enough. To sit in the Big 12, that kind of aspect there. I loved his hands. I mean, that he really, as once he got past his rookie season, he made in key situations, he'd come down with a football when you needed him to, and that was unlike Marcus Wheaton in some key moments. Because you remember back when Marcus Wheaton, there were some key plays that Marcus Wheaton dropped way back in his career there. But top to bottom, I think it's easier to say that this team is in a better position with the second set of three that you offered up than the first set of three.
Yeah, I would as well. I guess it was kind of more rhetorical and just kind of putting those guys together to see what they lost, what they gained. And obviously none of these new guys have taken a snap in Pittsburgh, so who knows what'll happen. But I like the potential and upside with that new group than as opposed to the group they lost.
And obviously you're going to have the learning and the growing pains that you're going to have to get past, and the knowledge of the game and that aspect of it. But you would think 3 years from now, looking at that latter set of three versus at where the three that just left were in their game, it'd be better. It better be better. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, agreed. So that is the 4th round pick, Calvin Austin. The third, also last thing on him, I love just a guy with a chip on his shoulder. He was a no-star recruit coming out. I mean, this guy did not get a lot of football looks. There was some track looks, and he said Memphis was the only school that would let him play football and run track, and so that's why he went there. And so just love the guy who goes from, nobody knows who he is. He walked on football team and then becomes a star player in college and a Steelers draft pick. That's just a cool story.
Interesting now to think about maybe what this may or may not mean for Damontae Johnson. That we'll save most of that talk for later on in the offseason here, but it does make you raise your eyebrows a little bit to think, what does this maybe potentially mean for a guy like Damontae Johnson?
Yeah, we'll see. But, like you said, conversation for a different time. Pickens just still have to kind of prove himself. And so all stuff I'm not thinking about too much right now. So that's the 4th round pick. Calvin Austin, the third.
How would you grade that? Maybe if you were to grade that, as objectively as you can.
Grade just the pick of Calvin Austin,
right, in the 4th round.
It's a good grade. I'm high on it. As I'm sure people can tell by the way I'm talking about it. I mean, I don't know, B plus. I just, my favorite part of the entire draft, Dave, was the 2 receivers they drafted, getting Pickens and Austin. Pickens in the 2nd, Austin in the 4th. That just got really good value there, really good talent, and so I think just what they did to the receiver room in general was really well done this draft.
Much needed.
Absolutely. So moving on to no 5th round pick, so long wait between the 4th and 6th round selections. But when that 6th round came in at pick 208, a very familiar name and one that almost was the free space on the bingo card of the Steelers mock drafts, although I did not have it on my mock draft, so shame on me. But Connor Heyward, the fullback, H-back, tight end, whatever you want to call him, out of Michigan State. Most in the media are just calling him Cam's younger brother. But Connor himself, to me, is a really good football player.
And that's what he is. He's a football player, and it's very, very cliche. But look, it was easy to tie him from several aspects, I think, to the Steelers. I had him, I think, going into 7th round overall there, but they wanted him. They took him in the 6th round so they could guarantee they'd get him. Is my viewpoint on that. People say it's a wasted pick. Why are you doing that? Look at his height. He's not really a true tight end. He's not really truly a fullback. He's not really truly an H-back. He's not truly a running back. Well, that in and of itself is maybe the beauty of this all is he can wear a lot of different hats for you. And I think where people get lazy in this is they don't actually go watch the tape on him. They see what he's listed at, and they have maybe a misconception of maybe what he is. And man, you look at the total touches that he had at Michigan State, and it'd be one thing if he's getting these touches at Central,
not Michigan State,
yeah, not Michigan State here. But I mean, you look at his total touches that he had, and the production that he had, and with these being catches, and with these being runs, and that kind of thing there. And then you look back at what, and I'm not trying to make a one-on-one comparison here, but back with Derek Watt when he was coming out, of Wisconsin, Watt didn't touch the ball not even nearly as much. Here's what I have on this on him. Lead blocking, so he can function as a lead blocking fullback, H-back, ball carrier, flex tight end, and even occasionally as an end-of-the-line tight end in the right situations. He's a switch army knife player and can function as a core special teams player. For his college career, he had 211 rushes for 825 yards and 5 touchdowns. He also caught 96 passes for another 711 yards and 6 touchdowns. Boy, you want to get a good look at what this kid did. Look at that game-winning touchdown against Pitt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Middle of the field, contested catch. I mean, that's upside, I think, that you get with Connor Heyward. That's over 307 total touches at the college level and in the Big Ten. And Derek Watt didn't come close to those kind of touches at Wisconsin. He's kind of a throttle. Assuming he can give you what you want on special teams, he's kind of a throttled up version of Derek Watt, if you will.
Yeah, my comparison to Hayward when I did the pre-draft profile on him was Jason Snelling from the Falcons, who hung around the league for a long time. And so, yeah, Hayward put up the numbers because he was a running back, a legitimate true running back in Michigan State for the bulk of his career. Then Kenneth Walker transfers from Wake Forest to Michigan State this year. So they move Hayward from running back to tight end, kind of played that fullback tight end, Swiss Army knife, as you mentioned, role offensively. But what I was most impressed about Hayward was just his hands. He's a very natural catcher. He plucks the ball well. He catches away from his body consistently. And as you said, that Pitt game, that touchdown he had down the seam, high point and finishing, taking the shot from the safety and making the play to score. This guy was a weapon, and he's athletic. He runs well. I mean, he doesn't have obviously blazing speed, but I think he runs well overall. He's well put together. And so he's someone who can get involved in the boot game, the screen game, play action game, things like that. He certainly brings a lot more offensive value than Derek Watt, who to me basically brings 0 offensive value. But I will say, he's being introduced as a tight end. Alfredo Roberts said he'll be in the tight end room. This guy's not a tight end. This guy's not an inline tight end. He's 5'11", 240 with sub 32-inch arms. You're not an inline tight end that way. When he did it at Michigan State a little bit, he struggled to anchor, struggled to sustain blocks and things like that. So will he be inline occasionally? Sure. Derek Watt sometimes will get motioned out in super heavy 22, 23 personnel packages, but this guy's not blocking base 4-3 ends and things like that. Just does not have the size. Show me any tight end who's under 6 foot with 31.25-inch arms playing tight end. They don't exist. And so to me, I call him more of an H-back, fullback type, but certainly there's offensive value there. And of course he should, and hopefully will become a really core 4-phase special teamer.
And that's why I phrased in my write-up on him when going through all the ways you could use him the way I did. I had, lead blocking fullback, H-back, ball carrier, flex tight end, and even occasionally as an end of the line tight end in the right situations.
Yeah, which to me is just, it's almost you put him at tight end to run play action and run him in the flat or something like that.
Right,
I mean,
to throw him the football.
Yeah, obviously, it's 2-3 snaps you can do it. That's fine, but that's not going to be his primary role. So I get you got to put him in a room somewhere. I'm a little surprised he's not kind of more with the running backs and being coached by Faulkner. But again, I think when in the actual practical terms, regardless of what coach he has, he'll be that H-back, fullback type of guy.
He'll probably be in a lot of different meeting rooms, quite honest. When push comes to shove here. Here's the thing, first and foremost, if he's going to make the 53-man roster as a rookie, he's going to have to be that core special teams guy. And there's a lot of guys going to be gunning to be that guy. The two or three, four core guys that they have. Obviously, Derek Watt, is going to be expected to be one of those in there. Generally, you have a linebacker that at least one linebacker that's usually in that picture as well, too, there. So has the team kept kind of, I don't know. To be honest with you, it's going to be hard for me not to call him a fullback until until I have a lot of reason to there. But, maybe will the addition of him prevent you from carrying that third traditional blocking tight end? I don't know there, but with could they carry both Derek Watt and Connor Heyward? Yeah, that seems a little redundant, but it's not totally out of the question, especially if you can consider him maybe the third running back too.
That's true.
In other words, he's your third running back. He's your backup fullback. He's your third tight end. And, he's your core special teamers. If you look at it that way, you can start maybe carving out a potential who would you rather have? Kalen Ballage or
give me a hard one there, Dave. Yeah, give me
or Connor Heyward, or
that's a lot of value that Hayward's going to have. I mean,
you're right, and that's
the bottom of the roster,
and that's why I think people are missing here. Would you rather have Kevin Rader or would you rather have Connor Heyward? If you start looking at maybe of how you can combine a few different kind of guys into one player with the major aspect of it being this guy's got to be on all four special teams units, then you can start maybe envisioning him on the 53. But here we are in it's May. Happy May.
Happy May.
Here we are in May. As I always like to say, these things have a funny way of working themselves out, right? So
right.
Just look at him as a player and what he offers. Yeah, he needs to. There's a lot of aspects of his game. He's not great in any maybe single one of them. So he's going to have to definitely carve himself out that role on special teams first and foremost, and then maybe make a couple plays with the ball in his hand.
He's definitely a jack of all trades, but I think he can become a dominant special teamer, both maybe as a blocker up front and certainly on the coverage unit. But you're right. The more I've thought about it, obviously there's a competition between him and Derek Watt, and it's possible only one guy lasts. But I think it's also very possible that both are on the roster because, as you said, there is no clear defined number 3 tight end. Kevin Rader's there, but he struggled to make the roster, and you could probably put that guy on the practice squad again. And so just all the things that Hayward can do as that, last guy getting a helmet on game day, the last, guy on the 53-man roster, that's going to be attractive to Pittsburgh. So I think there actually is a scenario where both Derek Watt and Connor Heyward are on this roster week 1.
And then look, in any given game, you might have, let's say for some reason this team carried 3 truer running backs on the roster, which right now I can't tell you who those guys will be. I know who one of them will be.
Yeah.
Najee Harris. But there could be some helmet situations where you go into a game thinking, worst case scenario, Connor Heyward could be, our break glass in case of emergency running back. You know,
Mhm.
you don't want to get in a situation like that, but you better be prepared in case something like that was to surface. You know, one thing that I liked throughout once this pick was made, and the press conferences and all that followed, all and I understand why people. He's Hayward's younger brother, right?
Yeah, that was the storyline, the entire media portion of it.
All right, and what did the Steelers try to do once the pick was made? You know, to right now, what is Mike Tomlin, the position coach, and everybody tried to do?
They tried to shy away from that aspect and just embrace Connor as if he wasn't Cam's younger brother. Because, and this is, I agree with wholeheartedly, like this should be Connor's moment to celebrate his journey to the NFL, what he's done. He's earned the spot. This is not a handout, a charity case of, oh, you're Cam's brother, let's just make Cam happy by drafting Connor. I mean, Connor, to me, was a draftable talent. I think he would have been drafted by a team. I put a draftable grade on him. I thought he really, I thought he was going to Detroit, to be honest. Like Dan Campbell could not talk highly enough of this guy at the Senior Bowl. So I thought this guy was going to be drafted somewhere if Pittsburgh did not take him.
And if you ask me, that's the brilliance of Mike Tomlin. I picked up on it. I don't know, and with Alfredo as well too. They kept asking him about Cam Heyward, and if you go back and listen to that, he tried to distance himself from Cam. I don't know Cam Heyward, you know. If you think about it, it was craftily done because this Connor Heyward should be expected to stand on his own, right?
Mhm.
Connor Heyward should have been drafted because you like Connor Heyward, the football player, not because, he's Cameron Hayward's younger brother. And look, bloodlines are obviously important to the Steelers. There's no running away from that aspect. And to some degree, they like the novelty of having all these brothers on the roster. I'm sure to some degree it looks good. Yeah. It looks good. It's a feel-good story, that aspect there. But they're also not going to be afraid to cut Connor Heyward if he can't make the 53-man roster. He's not going to make the 53-man roster because he's Cameron Hayward's younger brother. Does that make sense?
No, totally. I think Tomlin made that point pretty clear. Listen, I understand there is some value in him having the bloodlines. As you said, Pittsburgh loves the bloodlines, whether it's, brothers on the roster or, when they drafted Terrell Edmonds. I mean, their dad played in the NFL and stuff like that. And they probably know Connor Heyward pretty well. I think Cam said that Connor's been in the Steelers locker room more than Kenny Pickett's been in the locker room. So like he's been around the team and they know who he is. Great. They know the character and stuff like that. So I don't want to dismiss it entirely, but certainly I don't want to make the entire focus to be on, no one even calling him Connor. They're just calling you Cam's younger brother,
right?
Cam's younger brother, because there's value in Connor himself and what he will bring. And this should be Connor's day to shine. And so I think Tomlin approached it in the right way of putting the focus on him and pretending for a moment as if he wasn't related to Cam Heyward.
And the sad thing about this, as we move into these next phase of these press conferences and all like that, it's going to be all questions about Cameron Heyward, and hopefully Cam starts. Look, he's pleased as punch. Cameron Heyward there's been no mistaking about Cameron Heyward as wanting the Steelers to draft his younger brother, yada, yada. But I think at some point, Cameron Hayward's going to have to plant the flag down too and say, look, he's a teammate of mine. All right. And he's going to have to make the roster. Let's stop referring to him as my little brother,
Right. Yeah. And listen, I mean, I'm not opposed to. You can recognize it. I made the joke, and I think Cam responded, if I want to see the Connor versus Cam repping backs on backers this summer. I know who's going to win that matchup, but I want to see it anyway. But our primary conversation today and our initial start of our conversation has been on what does Connor Heyward bring the Steelers himself. And so that's where the primary focus should be. The rest of it is that feel-good, fun story, which should be talked about and embraced. But again, primary focus needs to be on Connor, the player.
And as a 6th-round draft pick, there's no guarantee that he's not. You don't just pencil him in on this 53-man roster.
No, he'll have to earn it. He'll have to prove it for sure. And I will say, I don't want to pretend this is an A+ pick. I think his value and his ceiling is pretty capped as, guy who occasionally plays an offense, catches 12, 15 passes a year and is a fairly good special teamer. But I think there's a limit to what his ceiling is going to be in the role that he has, because he's not going to be an every down guy, obviously. And there is a concern to what they did on day 3 in their current room. A lot of special teams guys, how much offensive production are you getting from a Derek Watt, from a Connor Heyward, from a Benny Snell? Like, those all can be maybe really good special teams guys, and there's a ton of value in that, but there is a limit on, you need 4 special teams guys, in your running back room.
All right, now let's look at 6th round draft picks around the league. Occasionally, you hope to run across a player like Antonio Brown, right? Just a guy that just generationally becomes top of his position during a set of years while he's with you and all like that.
And did you know Tom Brady was a 6th round pick? I just want to make that clear.
How many quarterbacks were picked before him?
You think I would know the number? I actually don't know the number off the top of my head, but I know that T. Martin was one of them.
What I'm getting at here is if you have a 6th round draft pick and he sticks with you for 4 years and constantly gets a helmet for 85% of those games, that's a great pick, man. It's a fantastic pick. Even if his stat line ends up being 30 special teams tackles, 200 total yards from scrimmage, and 3 touchdowns.
Sure. I think that's a plausible scenario for what a career in Pittsburgh could look like for Connor Heyward, but it is that high floor, low ceiling, to kind of use the cliche terms on what I think Hayward's NFL career arc will look like.
I mean, you look around the league, how many of these 6th round draft picks after 2 years are still going to be on rosters?
Probably about half of them. Yeah. I mean, so point taken for sure. I mean, I don't want to poo-poo the idea too much. I just want to recognize, like, this is not going to be like one of the greatest draft picks of all time, probably in Kevin Colbert history. There's a limit to what Hayward's going to bring the team, but there's probably a safeness to it as well, where you feel like, again, that floor for him is pretty high. And again, I talked about it before. I think this guy's just a good football player, just flat out. This guy made big plays and big moments when Michigan State needed big plays. And
people will say they should have went running back there. They should have went. Yeah, we get it. But look at him, what he is. Let's see what happens.
Yeah. So, and again, a wholly expected pick there. That Connor Heyward is now a Pittsburgh Steeler. So, into the 7th round with their first of 2 7th-round picks, taking Mark Robinson, the linebacker from Ole Miss, brought in for a pre-draft visit. So again, really no surprise there. Undersized.
Bingo.
Undersized guy at under 6 foot, 230 pounds, switched from running back to linebacker, played running back at Presbyterian, then transferred to Ole Miss, had to sit out for a year, and then played this past year at linebacker, 91 tackles, 5 tackles for loss, and 3 sacks. So, a guy that Brian Flores talked about having some tools, some athleticism, some toughness, some physicality, but to me is probably more like a year 1 stash in the practice squad guy, because he is so new and so raw to the position.
Yeah, and I said bingo because another one that you can just draw the lines because of the pre-draft process and all back to the Steelers. Had him in for a pre-draft visit. That prompted us to have put him late in the rotation to do a draft profile on him. That's why, lo and behold, Steelers Depot was able to throw up a draft profile on that kid right after he was drafted there. I don't. Watching his tape and then, knowing the connection and all like that, quite honestly, I kind of wondered if this might have been more of a undrafted free agent signing. Makes you kind of wonder, had the Steelers not taken him, might he gone undrafted? I think there's a good chance in that.
I believe so. I think he was an undrafted guy.
Right. But within that, you get a guy that I think they look at as, all right, there's something to this kid at the linebacker position with 1 year. Obviously a running back convert, a JUCO, former JUCO player, right? And I think if you go back and you read some of the quotes from Lane Kiffin alone, and Lane Kiffin's careful with his words, right? I generally take Lane. By the way, I have become, I don't know, I have gone from, man, I just don't like Lane Kiffin this past offseason to, man, why isn't Lane Kiffin back coaching in the NFL? To be quite honest with you, because watching all that old Miss tape and just kind of his, seeing Lane Kiffin talk more both in media interviews and serious aspects, and go back and listen to some of these interviews. I don't know how it happened. I've become a Lane Kiffin kind of guy here, but to hear him go back and talk about Robinson, some of the quotes that he had says, this guy was effectively just turning heads, I think, in the special teams aspect of it after the conversion, and then started, scout team and stuff like that, making plays like that. And this guy earned himself a spot in that defense by making a difference in practices there.
Yeah, he moved up the ladder quick. I mean, this guy switched positions and became a starter for an SEC team.
Now, do we know much about him as Mark Robinson, the inside linebacker? I mean, we only got the 1 year of tape on there, and I haven't gone deep into it yet myself overall. But I could not help but come away with what I've seen so far, thinking, man, this guy's got a Vince Williams feel to him,
Mm-hmm.
And Vince Williams obviously played a lot more and on. I haven't looked a lot. One of the things that stuck out to me about Vince Williams coming out of FSU, good downhill player, packed a wallop, flat-footed, out in coverage. Why they kept him off the field a lot in sub-package situations at Florida State. I get a little bit more athletic feel, like an athletic a more athletic Vince Williams feel to this guy initially.
I didn't do the report on Robinson, but I've just watched some of the clips that you and others have posted, and just kind of reading the report as well. This guy can hit. I can tell you that.
He can hit.
This guy loves contact. I mean, he has some real big body blows. So, and with Vince, I get the comparison there. People think Vince was a big guy. He wasn't a big guy. He was 6 foot, I think 230. I mean, he played light in the NFL, but he played big. I mean, he hit big, and he had that physical nature. And Robinson, I think, has some of those traits, but overall, this guy's still super new to the position. I think his head will be spinning in the NFL. He was just trying to pick it up in college. Now he's trying to pick up in the NFL. I think there's a lot of growth and development there, and maybe he becomes a special teamer. I think he will look good there in moments, but as a linebacker itself in camp, there's probably a whole lot of work to do.
Supposedly a pretty smart kid from what I take it or gather initially here, but once again, new to the position. He's got so much to learn, but Lane Kiffin, I think Lane Kiffin probably sold this kid to the Steelers. I'm willing to think to some degree there, because once again, you don't have a lot of tape to go on overall in there. Here's the interesting dynamic right now. What the hell is Buddy Johnson is a question we've been asking for a while, for all last season into this season. The ship has sailed pretty much, I think, now on Ulysses Gilbert III. Marcus Allen is just tied to this team because of his up back play, I think. Right?
It's a bunch of special teamers.
Right. Spillane, another special teams guy. You're not going to you don't want to get in a situation outside of a goal line package where you have to put Spillane in that defense on the field there.
Mm-hmm.
The bar and the competition level isn't too incredibly high to be a fourth inside linebacker on this team right now, I don't think.
Sure, there's a path to make it. Now, I don't want to count out UG3. I counted him out last summer, and I was proven wrong about that. He made the team and, got a helmet pretty consistently. So it's a lot of the same type of dude. I mean, the difference between Spillane versus Allen versus UG3 versus Buddy versus now Mark Robinson, obviously stylistically, some guys are more athletic than others, but they're all basically occupying the same role. So there's a lot of competition there to be that, special team demon kind of guy. And so we'll see who comes out on top. I don't know how it's going to shake out, but again, my expectation is, a guy like Mark Robinson probably begins his career on a practice squad just to kind of keep learning the position and learning the NFL.
Of all the Steelers draft picks, I think the easiest one right now, but look, once again, things happen during an offseason, but the easiest one to see not making the 53 at this point would be indeed Mark Robinson. And look, they've got there's a lot of square pegs and not that many round holes right now. I think I hope T. Gray Scales has been renting.
I almost forgot about T. Gray Scales. Yeah, I don't think his
he might not make it past Tuesday.
Right. Yeah. Fair point there. So again, with Robinson, I think the upside is special teams is probably where he lasts in a best case scenario. So the idea of you going Hayward and then Robinson, two guys whose upsides are pretty similar in that regard, I didn't love. I mean, I know it's a 7th round pick and it's not that big of a deal,
not the end of the world, but yeah.
And also I just didn't think he was a draftable guy. I thought you could have gotten him as an undrafted free agent, but I understand Pittsburgh doing what they're doing. So I was not enthralled by this pick. I think there's a lot of development there for a 7th round pick. I'm not sure exactly how big the ceiling is with Mark Robinson.
You've run into big problems if Mark Robinson's on your 53 having to do anything more than run down kicks, I think. In fact, the only way he is on that is probably because it's a good problem, because he's a guy that makes every special teams tackle in practice in the preseason.
Yeah, I think this guy will have his moments. I think he'll have some big hits and probably bang around on special teams a little bit, but will he processing and coverage and getting off blocks and those kinds of things are probably going to be so foreign to him.
Not that it's a 1-for-1 comparison, obviously, because Vince played a lot more, but Vince Williams was a 6th round draft pick, and a lot of people thought he was a throwaway.
Sure.
Coming out of that year.
Yeah, Vince is proof positive that you can never count these guys out, and I don't want to count out Mark Robinson because while he's raw, there's upside to him. What if he learns the position and, he played pretty well last year, so new to the position. What can he do with some experience in the NFL system and dedicating his life to that, which he will now being in the NFL, now being a professional football player. So we'll see. But again, I think the upside here is just maybe a Robert Spillane type, a Vince Williams type, minus the defensive abilities. Vince Williams has that special teams guy earlier in his career. That's probably where I think the best case scenario comes from Mark Robinson. Because he's not a big guy or a fast guy.
I would have went Jeffrey Gunter right there.
Yeah, he went right after that, right? To Cincinnati. So you'll see him now.
So now I'll always have to look at that on the Wikipedia draft page.
But again, we know how important the pre-draft visits are. Pittsburgh does not smokescreen. They bring those guys in for a reason. And so no surprise to see Robinson become a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Or you could have made a case for a defensive back there, something along those lines. But all right, the Steelers' final draft pick of 2022.
That is quarterback from South Dakota State, Chris Oladokun. And the pronunciation might be something slightly different than that. I think Todd McShay said something a bit different, but in my head, I've now said Oladokun. So I'm going to probably keep saying that. So Pittsburgh does, in fact, take 2 quarterbacks. And so I will take my small victory lap for being the one that called that, but I got everything else wrong. And I'm good at getting 7th round picks correct. I got Presley Harvin last year and I got Chris Oladokun this year. So I'm useless for any other part of the draft, but the random 7th round pick, I am your guy.
Ola, O-L-A hyphen D-O-E hyphen capital K-U-N.
I'm too tired to try to work that out phonetically in my head right now.
Dokun.
Yeah, it might be Dokun. I'm going to keep saying Oladokun. I'm sorry.
Look, props to you, man. People probably thought you was losing it by putting 2 quarterbacks in there, but you had kind of laid this out for better than anybody could, the plausibility of it. And after the Steelers took Kenny Pickett, I jumped on board. I didn't want to miss the train as it left the station there, so it
was parked for a while. There weren't many people on board. You probably got a good seat.
Yeah, but I want to make sure before that train got out of the station, the way you sold it, I want to make sure that I grabbed a hold of it there, and I'm glad I did, because that's a hell of a shot call right there. Not only for a team to draft two quarterbacks is just monumental anyway. But for a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers to draft two quarterbacks with only 7 selections overall, just incredible. And tip of the hat to you. That's an incredible shot call there. But one probably that, you had a little bit of the signs were there to some degree. I'm not discounting what your call, but there were some telltale signs that maybe that something like this could plausibly happen.
Sure. It's not like this was such a random pull. I mean, this guy was brought in for a pre-draft visit. They were at his pro day. They clearly had interest in the guy, and they needed a 4th quarterback. So I think a lot of people looking back are realizing, oh, okay, it's actually pretty obvious that they took him. It's a interesting draft in terms of the picks overall. 2 receivers, 2 quarterbacks, and like a fullback, H-back type of guy. Probably not the way a lot of people laid this thing out with only 7 picks available to the Steelers. I think the big reason why they drafted Oladokun was because they didn't want to try to compete with him as an undrafted free agent, because
right.
They probably would have lost him with the way that Pittsburgh structures their UDFA deals. They only give out signing bonuses. They don't give out, because the way teams are working around the signing bonus pool is by offering, partial or full guarantees of base salary in contracts as UDFAs. And so Pittsburgh does not do that. And so for a quarterback who had interest, Oladokun was getting a lot of interest from around the league in the pre-draft process. He would have gone somewhere else to take more money, because I'm sure someone would have offered a quarterback, partial or fully guaranteed maybe first-year base salary. So Pittsburgh basically took him because they knew they would not be able to compete with the undrafted pool if they did not select him. So that's, to me, the number one reason why they took him.
Right. And they've said all offseason they wanted 4 quarterbacks on this roster, and obviously the tragedy that happened with Dwayne Haskins and all like that probably added to this element a little bit in there. It's hard to envision maybe it not, but it is what it is at this point. Guys like Jerry Dulac and other guys that professor that this there's a lot of people probably having to be talked off the ledge right now with this team, not only drafting 1 quarterback, but drafting 2 quarterbacks this year. But nobody will credit you outside of in the major media or local media and all like that. They're going to pretend and turn their head like you never said this was going, predicted that this thing would have happened. But make no mistake, look, we do what we do and are going to continue to do what we do. But that's an incredible shot call. that's Hall of Fame Steelers deep. That's Hall of Fame mock draft shot call. Really outside of mock draft shot call there. So kudos to you. And look, I after they had the connection with him, I got to admit, I watched a lot of Oladokun tape going back from pro day and on. So I've got a pretty decent grasp on this kid already.
Yeah, there's some talent there. I mean, this guy impressed in his past year at South Dakota State. He's a really well-traveled individual. This guy started his career at South Florida and then transfers to Sanford, and then transfers again to South Dakota State after playing at 2 different high schools. So he just had trouble trying to lock down a starting job somewhere. But he's got a good arm overall. He's athletic. I think he's a pretty smart kid. I think having to pick up new systems and bounce from place to place probably makes you naturally smart and adept to picking up new systems and verbiage and calls and things like that. So there is some talent there. I thought he was a borderline draftable guy, but again, not surprised to see Pittsburgh take him given their obvious pre-draft interest in him.
Can make some plays outside of out of structure. Fairly decent arm overall. I from what I've seen on the tape there, and good athlete, I think, overall, and comes down from, he's one of those South Florida kids, played down there with Damontae, already knows Damontae, not that that means a whole heck of a lot, but he ran with that same kind of athlete and player down there in Tampa, right? I think he's a Tampa kid overall in that area there. Yep. But Look, fun kid to watch on tape, and we're going to try to find as much, maybe all 22 of him from South Dakota State. And people say, well, why did he go to so many places? Was that what, Sanford, where Duck Hodges was there, right? And then the South Dakota State. You got to go where the opportunity is, and just trust and that somebody will see you. And obviously the Steelers did see him here. And now this continues part two of kind of the discussion that we had the other day, man. And obviously he's going to have to win a spot on this quarterback depth chart here. But if you were to bet right now, week 1 of the 2022 season, will your three quarterbacks on your roster be Kenny Pickett, Mitch Trubisky, and Mason Rudolph?
I guess that's where I'm at right now, but I know things could change so much, and we could talk about trade scenarios and those kinds of things. So that's the baseline. I'll go in with the easy conventional answer of those three, but I understand this is probably a fluid situation.
I think this has really added another level to the plausibility that the answer to that question will be no. Mm-hmm. And obviously Oladokun's going to have to show he belongs here moving forward. And I can't wait to kind of look at it at more all 22 aspects of his play and all. So, I mean, I just have a loose kind of idea what he is based on what I've seen, in the actual TV tape here. Yeah. Which, not a lot overall, but enough to have a kind of a decent grasp of what he can bring to the table.
Yeah, I thought he showed good zip and good touch. He was able to mix up kind of the fastballs and changeups when needed as a passer. I thought he had overall good command of the offense. He's athletic. He shows accuracy on the move, rolling to his left and to his right. In terms of the negatives, a slighter frame overall. He didn't really work under center. I watched him at the NFLPA game. He looked really uncomfortable working under center through an interception off of boot. When we had pressure, I think he kind of makes more mistakes in the pressure. Occasionally we'll try to do too much and play hero ball when he probably shouldn't. We'll leave pockets too early when he shouldn't and try to rely on that athleticism probably a little bit more than he should. And also just benefited from a really strong run game this past year. I mean, they ran for, I think, over 3,000 yards. South Dakota State did. Of course, they had Pierce Strong there who got drafted earlier, I think, on day 3. And so when they couldn't run the ball as effectively, you saw him kind of struggle a bit more. But I mean, they went out there and they blew the doors off Colorado State in week 1. I mean, they won big. And again, the run game was a big part of that. But this guy, showed up against FBS level competition.
I think what a lot of people fail, people will look at this. Well, this is a byproduct of Dwayne Haskins passing and all like that. But they had interest in this kid well before that unfortunate tragedy happened there. Sending a couple people to the to that pro day. Obviously, you think, well, they were there to see Pierre Strong, but the Steelers paid a lot of attention to Oladokun. They brought him in for a pre-draft visit on top of it there. So there has been, what I'm trying to get at is there has been, they've had interest in him really kind of throughout this process.
Sure, but I think it is fair to say they would not have drafted him, had it not been for what happened with Dwayne Haskins getting killed there. So, I mean, that and it's, you don't want to talk about it too much in those terms, but from a football standpoint, they needed a fourth quarterback, and so that is probably why Oladokun was selected. Had Haskins, had that not happened, I think they would not have been drafting a fourth quarterback or drafting a quarterback in general.
They might have tried to sign him as an undrafted free agent, and who knows. But anyway, how many quarterbacks drafted in this draft? 9?
I know Purdy was Mr.
4,
Irrelevant,
5,
right?
6, 7, 8, 9. 9 quarterbacks drafted. The Steelers, who had Alex was the only one that had that one on the bingo card, probably. 2 quarterbacks drafted by the Steelers of those 9, and 2 of the 9 were drafted after the Steelers drafted Oladokun. So, and because of the kind of visits that he had, there's probably a chance that kid maybe would have gotten drafted by a team after the Steelers took him at 241 overall.
Right.
I don't know. There wasn't that many picks left at that point, but Skylar Thomas went to the Dolphins after 6 picks after Oladokun, and then Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant by the 49ers.
Yeah, like I said, even if he hadn't been drafted, I think Pittsburgh would have lost out in the UDFA process just because they would have only offered a $20,000 signing bonus, and some team would have offered him probably $100K, partial guarantee base salary. I mean, I know there's a consideration about job opportunity and system and stuff like that, but if it's $100K versus $20K, money talks, and so he probably would have signed somewhere else. So I think Pittsburgh really did this to try to secure his rights as opposed to competing and probably losing in the undrafted process.
Bailey Zappi drafted ahead of Sam Howell. who
what
had
a
that?
weird one quarterback in the top 2 rounds. I mean, has that ever happened before? Ever?
I'm gonna have to look.
I'm sure somebody has a stat on that, but
yeah,
I
can find it. I don't want to spend the time on it because I'll go down a rabbit hole and you won't fish me out of it for a little bit there. But
even for how bad this quarterback class was, no one expected this to happen.
Right. Howell drafted in the 5th after Zappi. Carson Strong undrafted, which you could have made an argument. I suppose that could have happened. I would have bet that it wouldn't have happened. And just 9 quarterbacks in total drafted, period.
Well, I don't know how many quarterbacks get drafted in a typical year. I don't know. It's probably on the lower end, but I don't know if it's that dramatically on the lower end of things. I'm guessing it's probably about 12 or 13 they get taken per year, but just where they were taken. 1 quarterback in the 1st round, none in the 2nd round, then the 3rd round, a couple go, and then you get a couple of the late day 3 guys that you mentioned. So a very weird and historically different quarterback class.
Yeah, and wouldn't you figure we had to spend the most time of my tape study on it, and
for headphone users, we apologize.
Yeah,
for that sound.
Look, here's hoping Kenny Pickett ends up being the one quarterback that there was to be in this class to draft. The Steelers got it right. They got the lone quarterback worth having in this draft class. So let's hope that's the case.
The unanswerable question and the moot question is: had Pittsburgh not taken Pickett, would he have fallen too, or was he the one guy that teams were willing to take, say, in the early 2nd round?
I'd like to think he wouldn't have fell out of the 2nd round, but who knows?
Sure. Yeah. So that is the draft class, Dave. Your overall thoughts just on the actual 7 draft picks?
I would have liked to have seen a safety or a cornerback or a specifically an edge rusher thrown in this class. I took a lot of heat for thinking that this team would not draft a offensive lineman. That came to fruition. I was one that thought maybe this team would not draft a running back in this draft. That came to fruition. I am surprised that there wasn't a defensive back in this class, to be honest with you.
Although we found out after the draft kind of maybe why that was.
Right. And obviously right before the draft with them re-signing Edmonds, lessened kind of let them go maybe in a different direction, overall there. I kind of wondered what would happen with the defensive line situation there. I wasn't 100% convinced that they were going to draft a defensive lineman, but there was a lot more plausible in that. I think you look at this class, my initial feel overall, if I was to hand out a grade on this, would be like a B plus, B minus, I think. I think they could have done a few things a little bit later at a few positions that will put this thing up into the A category. I, like you, love the fact that they went 2 wide receivers in this draft class. I think that's what really keeps it from being maybe a B minus, C plus, is the fact that that's a position they really were hurting on, that they could have used some speed and a couple of different kind of people in there that had they not addressed that, I think your eyes would have been raised quite a bit more when it comes to this. So I we'll see what they do in free agency. Obviously, moving forward here, I really wanted them to come out of this class with an outside linebacker.
Yeah, I get that. I think they could go veteran hunting the way they did last year with Melvin Ingram later in the summer. We'll see what happens there. I just try to look at the players they took and see how good the players are and what they could capably do for this team. And obviously, this class will be defined by Pickett.
Right.
Pickett
In
succeeds.
a story.
And if he fails, then that's going to be what you remember about this class, obviously. But just looking at the group beyond that, the receiver's the best part of it. The fact they took two, but also who they took, the talent those guys have, the different skill sets they have. I think both those things are really attractive. Pickett, wasn't my guy, but I understand why they took him, and we'll see what happens there. Day 3, I think it was kind of a safer day 3, Austin aside. When you take Hayward, Robinson, again, ceilings I think are fairly low in terms of special teams guys. Robinson, really wasn't a fan of taking him in the 7th round or really taking him at all, aside from, if you could have got him as a UDFA, that's one thing, but draft pick, not really my kind of thing. And then honestly, I know I called the Oladokun pick, but me on quarterbacks, I would not drafted a quarterback in the 7th round. I mean, I think just what is the point there? The success rate is so low. What is the best case scenario for Chris Oladokun NFL career with Pittsburgh? I'm not even sure what that looks like. So I think it's almost a quote unquote waste of a pick there. I get why they did it, because they wanted a 4th quarterback and they were going to lose him if they didn't draft him. But I'm a go big or go home guy. I take one quarterback in the 1st round and leave the rest. So I actually did not like that from a philosophical standpoint. So I don't know exactly what grade I would give it. Probably more B-. But again, this whole thing's defined by Kenny Pickett's career.
I think B- is the most objective way to look at this class, to be honest with you. And I'm not sure that it, once again, I think maybe B+ more in my head, because, man, I really wanted this team to draft a couple of wide receivers with some speed, and the fanboy of me has that element as a big element to this class.
Mm-hmm. And I say all my grades knowing that it's not important and dumb and moot and no one cares and it's irrelevant, and now the real test matters once these guys get onto a football field. So draft grades, if you don't like my grade, that's fine, because I promise you it's not important.
What one position do you wish they would have drafted that they didn't draft?
I thought safety was going to be an option. Obviously, the move they made, we'll talk about in a couple minutes after the draft, kind of makes more sense why they didn't go safety. But I thought that'd be a position they were going to hit in the draft.
All right. Be interesting. If you're listening, you made it to through the podcast this far. Why don't you send us just your, one sentence and a grade of what you would grade this 2022 draft class. You don't have to get into fire anybody or this, that, and the other, or Hall of Fame. This person's going to the Hall of Fame or what have you. Just a quick sentence of your thoughts on this 2022 draft class, a grade, and maybe one position that you would have rather have seen this team address. It'd be interesting to kind of see the feedback that we get from the listener, initial feedback that we get from the listeners on that aspect there. All right, roll through roll those beautiful undrafted credits.
Yep, the undrafted free agents, 10 of them announced by the team. I'll run through them, and then we can talk about some names in particular. Offensive tackle, Jake Dixon from Duquesne. Running back, Mateo Durant from Duke. Defensive lineman, Donovan Jeter from Michigan. Outside linebacker, Tyree Johnson from Texas A&M. Outside linebacker, T.D. Moultrie from Auburn. Guard / center / tackle, Chris Owens from Alabama. Cornerback, Chris Steele from USC. Offensive tackle, Jordan Tucker from North Carolina, and running back Jalen Warren from Oklahoma State. So those are your 10 undrafted free agents.
Kevin Colbert listens to the podcast, doesn't he?
In what respect?
Get those undrafted running backs, man. Don't draft any. No, I kid there. I knew very little about the Duke kid. Ahead of and really all I knew is what you actually had a profile on him, so kudos to you on that. I only knew a little bit about him and the Alabama offensive lineman, just because major school kind of kid there. Since then I've learned more about Durant, the Duke running back, the Ohio State Jalen Warren kid. I dove into some tape of his he reminds me of my initial thought was that James Robinson out of Jacksonville. Kind of that bowling ball kind of runner there. Likes to try to run people over, real physical yards after first contact kind of player there. Durant, a little bit of shiftiness to him, got a few explosive runs overall. I'll have to look more at his tape, more from the all 22 end zone aspect, I think, to get a better feel for him. Can catch the football out of the backfield there. Some nice runs on tape with him, especially last year. I think he had even that first game against, who was it? Charlotte, I think. 59 and a 53-yard run. Both, I think he took to the house in that game there. I think he had something like 20-something, 30-something explosive runs during his career at Duke. But those three guys are really the only guy, both of the running backs now and the offensive lineman at Alabama are really the only three I knew anything about, to be honest with you, at this point right now. So I got a lot of tape to watch on these kids.
Yeah, Durant was the guy I knew the most because I did the player profile on him, Kevin Colbert, at that Duke Pro Day. So that's kind of what gave me the motivation to do the report on Durant. Smaller guy, pretty undersized for the position, but ran really well, ran 4.38 at his Duke Pro Day. I think the best thing about him is his ability to catch the football. He made some really impressive one-handed grabs. He looked natural out of the backfield, plays well in space, just lacks any power. This guy went down on contact super easily during his Duke career, but it's a different type of running back and maybe an option potentially in the passing game there. I think he'll look comfortable and fluid in that regard. Yeah, Warren had a good year. He's a different body type, a squatty body, kind of more of a one cut downhill type of runner. I thought Chris Steele was a draftable guy. I thought that guy could have been a later day 3 pick. He ran in the 4.4s with the combine, had 2 picks last year, has some size, obviously played at USC. So they had a couple of corners, him and Isaac Taylor Stewart, that I thought could be potential late day 3 guys. So I'm excited to learn more about Steele. Tucker's got a lot of experience. He's got good size overall. Owens has played up and down the line. Jeter had a pretty nondescript career. I think blocked a couple of kicks at Michigan. So maybe something there. And I got to learn more about Tyree Johnson and TD Moultrie. I think Moultrie, I'm not even sure how much he even played. I have to look at the numbers on him.
Okay. The Durant got a $15,000 signing bonus. That might be him and who's likely to be the top of the signing bonus guys here. Just a quick guess at looking at the 10 of them.
My guess it'll be Durant and Chris Steele.
Okay. And maybe the offensive lineman out of Alabama.
Maybe.
Running closer to the top.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of me guessing, just eyeballing some of the draftable talent. I thought maybe Steele, maybe Chris Owens as well. Okay. Maybe Warren. I don't know what they're giving the running backs.
You know anything about the A&M edge?
Not outside of a bio. I think I saw one clip of like a covered sack last year. He's like 240 pounds. Let me see if I can pull up what his stats were at. They love those A&M guys.
They sure did.
Did have 8.5 sacks last year, so there's some productivity. I don't know the quality of those sacks, but 18 career sacks for his 4-year career. It's not bad production.
And what is Jeter?
Defensive lineman. I don't know if he's more interior or an end guy. Let me see if I can pull up what his actual weigh-in was. Draft Scout has it. Looks like they're going to list him at 6'3", 310 with 33-inch arms. So he's probably going to be more of an end type of guy, defensive end.
Okay.
Pretty limited athlete, it looks like, and I think his production was pretty light overall. But again, Tomlin loves, and the whole roster, just Michigan and A&M, and there's 4 Memphis players on the roster now. So there you go.
The new Michigan.
The new Michigan, for sure. So that's the undrafted free agent pool. All right, Dave. So after all that, we thought, okay, the draft picks are in, the undrafted free agents are known, and also some of the rookie minicamp invite guys. I don't know if you want to mention them too much. Bryce Watts, who I think Josh said was teammates with Kenny Pickett in high school. So that's kind of interesting. They got a guy, a center from Missouri, Michael, I don't know how to say the last name, Maddie. I don't know how to say it, but really experienced guy, interesting player there. They got a Canadian, Tyrell Ford from Waterloo. He's coming out on a tryout apparently, and Taven Harville. There you go. And Taven Harville from Robert Morris, which feels like a Kevin Colbert saying, I'm bringing in an alumni for one last minicamp because Colbert's from RMU.
All right.
Let's see. So yeah, we thought about all that. Okay, finally things are calming down. Draft picks are in. UDFA's are in.
You're
I'm
gonna
gonna
go
take a
get some
break.
dinner and
Yeah, gonna get some dinner, just rest and enjoy that. Nope, Steelers back at it. They're not done adding to the roster, according to ESPN's Jeremy Fowler. Not been officially announced by the team. Probably won't until Monday or Tuesday. But the team reportedly signing veteran corner safety Damontae Kazee to a 1-year deal. Don't know the numbers on that. Probably a pretty cheap deal overall. So people asking, wondering why they did not address secondary in the draft. That's likely because they knew they were going to sign Kazee after the draft.
yeah, be interesting. Look, it's a 1-year deal. It's going to be under $3 million. I promise you that. Probably going to be a lot less than 3 million. You wouldn't think it's going to be more than even what Terrell Edmonds got. We broke down that contract the other day as well too. There, so more than likely there's going to be a veteran salary benefit deal. Maybe 150. Probably going to look a lot like the Jannard Avery contract. Quite honestly, there you get a guy with some experience though, right? Get a guy that could probably wear a lot of different hats in that secondary.
Yeah, he's a guy that, what's he going to be? I think he's kind of moved around. He's played slot corner. He's played, I think both safety spots. I loved him coming out of San Diego State. He was a really, big hitter for being an undersized guy, great ball skills. I mean, he had 7 interceptions, I think, back in 2018. Tore his Achilles in 2019, took a 1-year deal with Dallas. I thought bounced back, proved he was healthy. And so he was on my radar 2 years ago on my wish list. And so I'm happy to see him come in now. And so exactly what his role is going to be, I'm not sure, but he can play different spots and add good depth. And that's really important in the back end of your secondary.
Look, pedigree guy too. Kevin Colbert can't stay away from those guys on the cheap, right?
Yeah. Where did he get drafted? What was he, a 3rd-round pick, 5th-round pick? Wasn't a super high draft pick, but I mean, draftable guy that's, made his mark in the NFL for sure.
Right.
So yeah, I like the deal overall. It kind of reminds me of the Mike Hilton type role.
Did they bring him in, or am I thinking of somebody else? Did they bring him in for a visit way back?
I can check. I want to say no, but I could be wrong considering how long ago it was.
I can't remember if I'm confusing him maybe with somebody else, whether or not he was brought in or not.
Let's see.
Oh, he was a 5th-round pick. I thought for some reason I was thinking he was a 3rd-round pick.
Yeah, 5th round there because he was small and I don't think he ran particularly well. Did he come in 2017? No, he did not come in for a visit in 2017.
Read off some of them guys that were in 2017.
Patrick Mahomes, you can think about that. Josh Dobbs became a Steeler. Chris Godwin, Matt Collins, Takk McKinley.
Were there any defensive backs?
A couple. Marlon Humphrey, Josh Jones, Buda Baker. You thinking of Buda Baker maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe Obi Melifonwu, Zach Cunningham, linebacker. Yeah. So, but yeah, I'm happy to get Kazee. 1-year deal, cheap. I think this guy, again, kind of the Mike Hilton role, undersized, but physical, plays much bigger than that size, can hit you. And I think Kazee's proven to have really impressive ball skills, ability to make plays on the football.
Upgraded version of the kid they drafted last year.
Norwood?
Yeah.
I want to get eyes on him. I think I was impressed with what Norwood did last year, but kind of a similar thing, float between slot corner and safety and some sort of dime role potentially. I think Kazee's a bigger hitter overall. I think Norwood, decent coverage guy. I think he has good overall man coverage skills, and Kazee maybe in a similar vein. So probably similar. I think Kazee, again, a bit bigger of a hitter though.
All right. Obviously, fans are saying, "Well, that's a funny way to spell Tyrann Mathieu," but that just wasn't going to happen the moment that Edmonds got a deal there, and they probably told Kazee, "Let's see what happens at the draft." And all, and then kind of go from there. So they probably had that one sitting in their back pocket here. I don't think they're done either, and I have a feeling we're going to see maybe 1 or 2 added here, cheap veteran free agents in the next week or so.
Yeah, that's certainly possible. Now the comp pick window ends, I think, starting Monday. Not that it's really relevant for Pittsburgh, but you could see some more action there just overall.
They
in
need
free
an
agency.
outside linebacker. They got to get an outside linebacker on this team, I think, overall. And I think didn't Mike Tomlin kind of address that? He was asked about the depth behind Watt and Alex Highsmith exiting the draft, and he said it's not overly concerning. He says it's also something that we're capable of addressing later on down the road. I wonder how much later on down the road that is. Look, I like Jannard Avery. I like Jannard Avery in that draft class, had him in a mock draft and all. But once again, my like for Jannard Avery was more off the ball than it was off the edge there. I think you got to do something else there at that position, Alex. I really do. I was hoping they were going to address that during the draft there. I don't know. Maybe they're higher on Derek Tushka than maybe I need to go back and watch more Derek Tushka film. Maybe I'm missing something there with him. But I would like to think that this team's going to address an outside linebacker with some experience now moving forward in these next couple of weeks or days.
One guy who fits that bill of an experienced edge rusher who would fit well in Pittsburgh's system, and I think I'm pronouncing the name correctly here. It's, let's say, Melvin Ingram. How do you say it? Melvin.
Yeah. He was with the Chargers, and then
the Chiefs last year.
Yeah.
Forget where he was at before.
We're pretty Melvin. Yeah, we'll just call him Melvin.
Yeah, so that'd be something to look at. We'll just call him just to troll him. Hey, Melvin, you interested?
Wouldn't that be something? Wouldn't that be something?
Yeah, it won't be him. But yeah, I think they need to add some edge depth as well. But yeah, Kazee, that's a good point on Tyrann Mathieu. It's kind of like the meme of we have Tyrann Mathieu at home. That's Damontae Kazee. It's like that version of very watered down Honey Badger.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank of who this team really would even look at free agent kind of outside linebacker position at this point, because you probably want that guy to be able to play some special teams for you too, right?
Yeah, Melvin didn't last year, and they got Tuska, so yeah. I don't think it's a requirement. I mean, but Avery kind of can't, so it's a little weird.
Yeah, Trey Flowers is still sitting out there, isn't he?
Is he?
Maybe. Did he sign anywhere?
I'm not aware of him signing anywhere, but I haven't followed. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think special teams is less necessary when your entire backfield's running down kicks and punts now. So maybe they don't have to have that guy be a team's guy.
Let me look and see who else is on this list here. Jerry Hughes, I think, is still unsigned, but he's 34. Clowney, I think, is still unsigned, is he not? Which I don't want any part of that. Melvin never mind. Ryan Kerrigan's 34. Justin Houston's 33. They did look at Houston supposedly last year, right?
And Kerrigan.
Yeah.
Houston kind of makes sense.
DeMarcus Walker. What do we know about DeMarcus Walker from the Texans?
Not much.
Boy, getting down in here. Pernell McPhee's 34 now.
McPhee kind of makes sense. A heavier set. Yeah. Baltimore sets the edge well in the run game. I could kind of see that.
Didn't Whitney Merciless retire?
Yeah, he retired. Pittsburgh looked at him, but he retired.
What about that Pokemon player, Cassius?
Oh God.
No, thank you. Alex Okafor is 31. Man,
I could see that.
That's possible there. Nate Orchard's still 29, but not much.
Didn't Pittsburgh look at him?
They did. They brought him in way back. I thought win, but I mean,
has he played? Has he done anything? He was with Cleveland, I think, initially for a little while. Does he have any sort of resume over the last couple of years?
Didn't they look at what about Rasheem Green out of with the Seahawks? Didn't they look at that kid?
Is he an edge guy? He's kind of. Was he playing more edge in Seattle?
I'm trying to remember.
I don't know.
It's been so long.
Looks like Orchard has barely played. He's been a bit piece with Washington. He's had a couple of tackles. Has had 6 career sacks, 1 since 2018.
I mean, we're down here in no man's in the land now here. So once again, Derek Roberson with the Titans. What was the story with him?
Yeah, I couldn't
Sam
tell you.
Houston State kid. I don't remember too much about him. Obviously hasn't played much of anything either. Ideally at this point, you would like somebody that's either been a special teams guy or a more veteran guy that actually has some tape on him,
Yeah, you would expect it to be a veteran.
But it's, nothing's jumping out than maybe other than a Trey Flowers. And now with, maybe somebody sitting on a contract with him, sure. After the compensatory period ends. And you could probably still stand to add, I don't know if they will or not, maybe a cornerback to that room. I know Jerry Dulac said, well, get past this and, maybe it's not dead with Joe Hayden, but if Joe Hayden's coming back, it's not going to be for anything sizable income with him. And
what's he coming back to do? To start? Right. He's not starting. He's not playing
right.
on special teams. He's not running on
special teams, but you're bringing him back to start the season as a starter is what you're doing.
I can't see that happening. Just no way. They bring in Wallace. They re-signed Witherspoon. They got Sutton. Can't see it happening. So
could they bring in a running back with some experience now?
Maybe. I mean, it wouldn't shock me. I wouldn't be opposed to it. With the edge group, I mean, maybe you sign somebody now, then look at the waiver wire on cutdowns this summer. I mean, it might be where you end up grabbing somebody from.
Okay.
We'll see. I mean, but I think, there aren't any significant holes. I think we're all well enough on this team.
All right.
So that is the Kazee deal. And yeah, I'm sure we'll see more signings around the league starting Monday when that comp formula window ends.
Okay.
All right, Dave. Anything else here? Tomlin, Colbert speaking after the draft. Don't know if they said anything incredibly relevant to the draft class in general, but it was an emotional moment for Kevin Colbert when he was asked about, just the legacy that he's going to leave this team. This is his final draft. I'm not sure if he's going to have a retirement press conference or what. I don't know what the plan is for that, but this is obviously his last draft, the last picks he'll ever make as GM of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And so Colbert's been one that's tried to shy away and kind of tamp down on the retirement talk. And he's been very, focused on the task at hand, which you have to respect him for just kind of still guiding the ship the whole way through. But there was a moment where, obviously he got really emotional and just kind of reflecting back on his time in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I mean, how could it not? I mean, for him to last this long and be as as you said, be able to tamp it down. I think I would have lost it a long time ago with some of those questions there that he's been asked throughout, kind of this process and all. But somebody was cutting onions in my house last night, man. A lot of them there. That was a real touching moment there to see Mike Tomlin, reach out and put a hand on him there. I thought was special and on top of it. And man, it's not going to be the same, for as long as I can remember, obviously since, Kevin Colbert's been the guy pulling the trigger on this thing and all of what we do now during the off season and draft prep is generated by what Kevin Colbert has done and those aspects there. Obviously made a lot of great picks over the years and free agent signings and just really a lot of what the culture is with the Steelers right now is because of Kevin Colbert. And we all knew this day would come at some point. Obviously been talking about several off seasons in a row about when it might be and year to year and all like that. And man, I hope just to some way, shape, or form he stays tied to this organization. Really, I do. And is he a slam dunk Hall of Famer?
I'm not sure. I haven't thought about it too much. I think calling him a slam dunk Hall of Famer is probably too strong. I think he certainly deserves consideration for what he's done for the NFL and for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think there'll be times to think and talk about that later on. I think when Colbert gave that answer, the question was in response to his legacy, but what seemed to choke him up the most and when he kind of got emotional was when he talked about winning 2 Super Bowls and doing it for Dan Rooney and, missing him, obviously. And so it kind of really shows the person that Kevin Colbert is. It's not about the personal, individual accolades and praise for him. It's about the organization, the culture, the team, the ownership, the family relationship of it all. And that's kind of where he broke. And so I think you really got that window into who Colbert is. And I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about Kevin Colbert. He's respected and well liked, and just a unicorn to be a GM, be with one team for 22 years is remarkable. And he's been in the NFL for, I think, 38 years, he said. So it's a new chapter for him. And so we wish him the best of luck.
Right. Absolutely. And look, I mean, he's hit, he's missed, obviously it boils down to Super Bowl Lombardi trophies, right? And I bet there's a few, I bet he thinks that he had a good opportunity to have one or two more in there, but I think top to bottom, I mean, high character guy, and you knew what you were going to get every time he had the microphone or the camera in front of his face, and for the most part, you kind of knew what you're going to get every offseason in free agency, and the kind of player, there really it became a thing where Kevin Colbert kind of became like the drapes, right? You kind of took it for granted of what he brings to the organization. So he will be missed for sure.
Yeah, and he made our job easy. I mean, I'm looking at my draft options for day 3 heading into yesterday, and 3 of the 4 names that were on that list they drafted. And so, I mean,
and there are only 16 names on that list, were there not?
Right. Yeah, only 16. I went a little extra heavy just to throw out some different names we haven't talked about as much. But yeah, I put on there Mark Robinson, Connor Heyward, and Chris Oladokun. And so those guys were drafted. And, Calvin Austin was kind of Austin, again, was like the only pick that was unexpected that we didn't talk about much in terms of thinking he'd become a Pittsburgh Steeler. Everyone else we had
and why? And we hit on that, right? Because of the size, because of thinking they would address it earlier, not go 2 wide receivers right in this class. So, but I'm glad they did. I'm glad he was a surprise.
Yeah, good pick there. And so we'll see what the new GM is. I'm not sure what that process looks like. I think Colbert said he's not entirely sure. Rooney's going to spearhead when the second interviews will happen. I imagine it'll be within 2 or 3 weeks. I think you want to get a new GM in there and kind of give him some time before you get into the later summer and right before training camp. So we'll see when that is, but we'll let you guys know.
All right. Did we miss anything?
I think we got pretty much everything, and we can I guess we're doing a podcast tomorrow as well, probably. So we'll talk about maybe some loose ends then. But any reader emails you want to get to before we close out today's show, Dave?
All right, let's Danielle Woodruff is back in here. Hey guys, thanks for getting in my question last time. Appreciate the response. Just a quick follow-up now that the draft is wrapped up. Since this will be the one Kevin Colbert last acts as GM of the Steelers, what do you think the chances of Kazee getting inducted into the Hall of Fame before it's all said and done? His credentials seem to speak for themselves, but it doesn't seem to me to be like a certainty. As a follow-up, how much do you think this draft, if at all, will affect his legacy? Thanks again for all the hard work. Woodruff in Manchester, England. Look, I think we just hit on it. I don't think he's a lock. I mean, obviously, as a Steelers fan, you would sit here and say, how can he not be? I think his chances are very strong. Longevity, always having these teams seemingly competing. Now, albeit you look at the playoffs situations with this team the last several years and not getting the job done in that aspect, would have the people in the "what have you done for me lately" crowd kind of talking down on this. What will this draft class do to his legacy? Look, if Kenny Pickett hits right out of shoot with this thing, you end up, I don't know, in a Super Bowl or deep in the playoffs in the next couple years, I mean, you're going to look at this as another feather in Kevin Colbert's hat. I think that's going to be the measuring stick of this class for at least the next 3 or 4 years is Kenny Pickett, obviously.
Sure, it'll define it for the next decade. What Pickett's career will be really tied to how you view this class, as it should be. So for Colbert in the Hall of Fame, it's possible. Again, like I said, I hadn't thought about it too much. I think him being well-liked is going to help his odds. When people like you, they kind of tend to vote for you a little bit more, I would like to say. But I think his resume certainly is worthy of it. Will it happen? It's just kind of a tough path for those guys to get in that way. It may not be for a little bit, but certainly be in the Hall of Honor. And to me, he has a Hall of Fame resume.
Xerxes writes in, FYI, it's welcome back Cotter, I'm Southern. We always said Carter, but it was obviously spelled Kotter. But I only make that correction so Alex can look it up and binge watch it. He says, number 2, did Kevin Colbert officially retire before day 3 of the draft? Because I feel like I got punked. He says a tight end / fullback, 5'7" wide receiver, and another quarterback. He says, can we get a do-over? What's your take? Well, I think if you listen to the show, you kind of know what our take is on all these picks. I can see a lot of people and saw as much, I think, on the Twitter machine last night, thinking with the hot take of did Kevin Colbert officially retire after the first couple 3 rounds?
Yeah, I didn't, I gave it a B- overall. So by no means was that a glowing sterling grade. I think day 3, and I don't like necessarily say, well, the guy's 5'7" and he's a fullback. Like those are just, very broad things. You want to look at the player individually, but there are some things I would have disagreed with. The Leal pick, I still not crazy about. Robinson, I didn't really like. Oladokun, I don't really see the point of the quarter. I mean, I get why they did it, but me and quarterbacks, but those are also 7th round picks and they're not the most consequential thing in the world. So we'll see. But again, for Pittsburgh and for Colbert, no surprises. I mean, if you're surprised by the guys Kevin Colbert drafted, you shouldn't be. Maybe from aside Calvin Austin, because everyone else was really expected.
I want people to understand now why we do our mocks, because what we think the Steelers will do versus what we will do.
Yeah, exactly. And frankly, we put in so much work trying to figure out who they're going to draft. I like to do my mocks that way because that's kind of the players, the fruits of the labor. Yeah, just that's the whole reason why I'm squinting at pro day photos at 2 a.m. in the morning.
There you go. Ashley Bright writes in, questions, comments, tremendous work with this draft. He says, I followed you all for 72 straight hours of coverage. Awesome. Well, thank you for that. He says, thoughts on the Steelers possibly bringing back Hayden or another vet cornerback before camp, or wait and see? I think we addressed that kind of already, Ashley. Number 2, I think the first 2 picks could the offensive version of the 2007 draft of the first and second Timmons and Woodley draft, that duo had impact. So he thinks potentially Pickett and Pickens could be the Timmons and the Woodley of this year's draft. I see what you're doing there, Ashley. Number 3, I hope the 3 quarterback duo is not close. I'm old enough to remember 1996 with Jim Miller, Mike Tomczak, and Cordell Stewart coming in with a 3-way competition. Coward tried to use all 3 at points early, and that did not work. He remembers, let's see, number 4, I'm excited. The Steelers were extremely calculated this offseason, knowing the strengths in free agency and the draft. They worked both in complementary fashion in terms of prospects and position values. He writes here, number 5, the key signing was Trubisky. That signing allowed them to have confidence to sign free agents and yet draft best available players. Trubisky signing was the first piece of the to the offseason. He says, number 6, thank you, gentlemen, the absolute best in the business. He says, I have comfort in saying that.
Yeah, it's a lot there. Will they become the next Timmons, Woodley? I get the comparison you're making. Let's hope so. That'd be great to have. Will it happen? I'm not sure, but optimistic about Pickens. And if he, make sure he matures and is doing the right stuff, I think this guy could become a real weapon for the Steelers offense.
Jay Barbardi writes in, what is it about Leal that was more appealing to Pittsburgh than you were Ziki? Was he the Iowa State kid?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He says he's played every spot at 6'6", 313, 35-inch arms, 33 vert, 4-year starter, a little lumbering, but Leal isn't the twitchiest guy either for being sub 300. I don't know. Barbodi's watched some of this film on Leal.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of asking, why did they take this guy over the other guy? We can't always answer those questions, of course. I think Leal's younger. Leal's 21, and the other guy's 23, I think. So I think they're looking at some projection and upside and of what he'll be in a year or two compared to what the other guy is right now. So
what do you think about the comment Leal isn't the twitchiest guy either? I think he moves pretty damn good.
Yeah, I thought overall he was a pretty fluid guy with good bend. I know in some of the testing, his broad and his explosion numbers were kind of poor, but the agility numbers overall were good. I think Leal is just trying to figure out exactly who he is, where he fits best, what's his best trait and role and impact going to be is a little tough right now. But I think Tomlin talked about some of the rawness and trying to develop that guy. I think they're kind of looking at what he'll be in a year or two is the reason why they took him.
Look, you were Zareki, however you say his last name, out of Iowa State, is a guy that I kind of had circled ahead of the not Senior Bowl, Shrine Bowl, for several reasons. But the Steelers never really seemed to show much interest. I'm sure they met with him at the Shrine Bowl to some degree, but why Leal over him? That's above our pay grade. I get it from the measurable standpoint for sure with him. That's one of the major reasons why I had him circled as a guy to kind of study in there. I think Leal is the more explosive player. The more productive pass rusher, the higher effort guy, at least from what I've seen on the tape of the two players. But as far as answering the question, what is it about Leal that was more appealing? I think younger. I think better pass rusher. I think potentially maybe they see him as a little more position flexible, perhaps, and a little bit higher ceiling.
And played in the SEC, and Pittsburgh really values that level of competition. Tomlin talked about seeing him against Evan Neal and things like that. And so I think maybe there was a projection about seeing him against some better competition.
And sure, will it be interesting to kind of follow the paths of that other kid to see what if down the road? Sure, I get it on that. Cody Kelchner writes in, there are a few drafts in the history of this team I laughed harder at. We have completely derailed. We are one injury away at corner and safety from being out of contention. He says in capital letters, yet again, Colbert and friends are drafting like we are a splash player away from a Super Bowl. He says, sure, they might fill in some holes with unsigned vets and surprise cuts from other teams, but they won't be key pieces for years to come. He says, this is bad. As a lifetime fan, it'll be hard to see this as a shining moment for the organization and a once great GM.
Well, I don't think anything I'm going to say will change your mind there. I think there are some good things about this class, some things I don't like about this class. That's pretty typical of it. I don't think it's nearly as doom and gloom as you're saying there. And I just try to focus on the players themselves. I think you're talking about positions and what they could have taken, and I get that to a degree, but you get good players, your draft class is going to look good, and that's really my focus right now, not about what positions they did not draft.
Had a consensus A+++ draft class been the difference in making this a team in our eyes that could compete for a Super Bowl in 2022?
Wait, the question is, would an A+ class made Pittsburgh Super Bowl contenders?
Right.
Probably not.
I agree.
So,
all right. Let's see. Hayes M writes in, I guess this is Mathena writes in, hi, David. A couple of questions for you. How much cap room did the Steelers have to spend on non-rookie free agents after the draft? Plenty. I will tell you that. Now, there is that signing bonus floor, that all signing bonuses can't total. I don't know what the number, what is it? 170,000, 180,000.
I think it increases each year, but yeah, it's something like that.
That's not going to be an issue. Cap room's not an issue. Put it to you this way: the Durant kid that they gave the $15,000 signing bonus to, only $5,000 of that will impact the salary cap, based on the rule of 51 right now, because obviously there's a minimum base salaries in that, and outside the rule of 51, only the portion of the signing bonus for that year goes against the cap. So they used up a whopping $5,000 in cap room. Let's say they gave all 10 of these guys $15,000 signing bonuses, which I guarantee they won't, but let's go ahead and use that. What's 10 times 5,000, Alex?
Just told there would be no math. I believe you're looking for 50 grand there.
Oh, I think they can handle that. Number 2, do you see them signing a veteran slot receiver in the summer? Perhaps Jarvis Landry. I think Jarvis Landry might be going to where? What's the
I
rumor
don't
on
know.
him?
I mean, who knows about
What
Cleveland?
Odell? Wasn't Odell making a push for him after the draft or something like that? I thought there's a look.
Well, Odell's not even on the team right now, so I don't know what team he's pushing for.
Yeah, I forget what Odell tweeted or something.
Odell was making up some rumors on Twitter yesterday too.
I don't know. Yeah, Jarvis Landry's not going to land in Pittsburgh at this point. I don't think.
No. I mean, could they add a veteran? Maybe. I mean, it'd be nice to have a veteran in the room, but who are they going to add? The talent pool is just
you got Anthony Miller in there.
Yeah, you got Miller. So I think when they add Pickens, they add Austin. I mean, again, could they add some low-level guy potentially? But I think you're going to roll with the group that you have because that's where the talent's at.
If they add anybody, it's going to be a minimum salary veteran benefit contract and somebody that's not named Jarvis Landry that people probably won't be doing backflips over or throwing a parade for. Number 3, what do you think the chances are that Joe Hayden comes back? I think you just heard Alex talk about that. He says, if so, could he play more of a hybrid rover type role in the defense, given his veteran savvy and ball skills? I think Joe Hayden himself has said more than once in the past, he's not playing safety. He's not playing in the slot.
Joe Hayden better reevaluate those things, man. If you want to play, I mean, being a free agent for a while might change your mind about trying to play safety or something. But I mean, could it happen? I guess, but I just don't know what he would do, what the point would be, what his role would be. I think Pittsburgh was very clearly moving on from him, and I'm not sure what's changed after they've added to that group with Levi Wallace to make them want to bring back Joe Hayden for some role that, again, I don't even know what role it would be.
All right, I'm with you. I think there's a minute chance, but it would have to be mighty cheap, and it doesn't look like it. But stranger things have happened. I guess at this point.
Yeah, what did he make last year? $8 million last year.
Like 7-8 million. I mean, he's going to have to. He'd have to take. He'd have to make at the most $2.5 million, and that feels like. There's no way he signs for the Steelers for less than what Edmonds just made. I wouldn't think. That's a slap in the face. He wouldn't do that on principle alone. I wouldn't think. So
you're not signing a starting corner for $2.5 million. He's not going to be here for a backup role. So it doesn't make any sense.
No, it really doesn't. When you look at all aspects of it, at this point it would take probably a couple of injuries, I think, for Joe Hayden to come back.
I think that's the only way is if you go in, if he's still out there this summer, you get guys hurt in camp and you say, let's bring Joe back because he knows the system as a leader and can pick things up right away.
All right. What are we going to talk about maybe on Monday if we have a show?
I don't know.
More about some more looking at tape on something. We'll see. I'm sure they'll talk to some of these kids more, have press conferences and all. We'll figure out something, even if it's a short show. So, Alex, fantastic work, man. By you throughout this process, Matthew, Marksy, all of our guys there, but no other person I'd rather go through this part of the process of the offseason than you, pal. You do amazing work there. I enjoy talking football with you for 2 hours when we get on these things on top of it there. So within that, we will, let's see, on Twitter, you can follow me at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Send us your thoughts on grades and all like that. Also, ad-free version, SteelersDepot.com. If you want to make a donation, SteelersDepot.com. Both those buttons are upper right navigational bar. So we will look at more film and talk to you beginning of next week. As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.